We don't seem to have any shortage of superhero-themed content, but luckily, we've been seeing different takes on the genre. Sometimes they're darker, other times they're satirical or filled with social commentary. Jupiter's Legacy, the new Netflix original series, is now out, so let's take a look. After nearly a century of keeping mankind safe, the world's first generation of superheroes must look to their children to continue the legacy. But tensions rise as the young superheroes, hungry to prove their worth, struggle to live up to their parents' legendary public reputations and exacting personal standards. Okay, so this is going to be spoiler-free. Jupiter's Legacy is based on the graphic novels by Mark Millar and Frank Quitely. Now, I haven't read Jupiter's Circle or Jupiter's Legacy, so I can't say how this differentiates from the source material, but that also allows me to watch it without any expectation. The story revolves around two generations of superheroes. The older and original generation were the first superheroes. It kind of makes sense, right? They formed what is called the Union, which is kind of like the Justice League or the Avengers. It's a collection of heroes who come together to supposedly make the world a better place. The second generation is made up of the younger superheroes. Some are kids of the original heroes, and others, I don't know, we're not told yet how others have attained their powers. And maybe that's just a plot hole, or maybe it's just more content for future seasons. Josh Duhamel, Leslie Bibb, Ben Daniels, Mike Wade, and Matt Lanter are the main players in this, especially from the older generation side. They're an interesting mix, and I like the complexities that we see, not only in each character, but then in the dynamics of the group. The heroes adhere to what they call the Code, which is kind of their rules or guidelines that includes no killing. And the Code is there to hold the Union to a higher standard. But this ideal isn't always ideal for everyone. Duhamel plays Sheldon Sampson, or his superhero mantle, the Utopian. And he's the leader, and there are several layers to his character. I mean, just take his name, the Utopian. He was the instigator of the Code, and he's also some kind of extreme optimist, at least when it comes to how things should be. He holds out hope that society can be better, and like his name, a utopia. Leslie Bibb plays his wife, and I like how their relationship feels real. They work together, support each other, back each other up, but also they don't always see eye to eye and have some really tough conversations around their disagreements. Ben Daniels is the Utopian's brother Walter. He's highly intelligent and pragmatic. His character brings a flair of sophistication and calm to the whole series. Matt Lanter plays Sheldon's best friend George. He's a rich playboy who seems ultra-privileged, but also is a fierce protector of his friend. And finally, Mike Wade is Fitz, and we don't get a ton of story on him this go-round. We do have some character development on him to know his values, but he plays a minor role in this first season. Now, I love how the show is told in two different timelines. One is the present, where we watch our heroes deal with drama and issues of the world, and how the values of society now conflict, or at least they're not totally in line with the ideals that are set by the Union. The other timeline is a flashback that builds out how the Union came to be. We watch a very patient journey of our characters on their path to becoming the heroes. The flashbacks take place in 1929, and everything about those scenes is executed well. The costume and set designs transport us right into that era. And the visual tone of the film is browner or earthy tones to not only make it look just that sepia-toned and older feel, but it also makes the time feel dusty and dirty. And this is happening during the Great Depression, so the tone of the story matches the visual tone that they're presenting. We get a ton of backstory within these flashbacks too. This is where the majority of development comes for our older generation. We see their struggles, both internal and external, and at times it's creepy and compelling all at once. The present time is a little more lacking though in some development. We watch the clash of ideas between the old and the new generation of heroes, and while that navigation is very interesting, it does then focus more on discourse than action. And I'm not saying there aren't some action sequences in this, because there are, and there are some really great ones at that. Some of the fights are crazy, and several are really quite brutal and violent. And there's one in particular that takes place in a vault type of thing, and that was my favorite. The setup of the scene and then the choreography and sound design were just really exciting. But this show is predominantly a drama. It's setting the stage for more to come, and I think that might lose some people. The storytelling is really patient, but it does a phenomenal job of actually creating character depth. I still think there's a lot more to be uncovered and revealed, and even with some of the major players in the younger generation, but this does give us a good introduction to them. The Utopian has two kids, Brandon and Chloe, and their drama is different, but it's also very similar. It also has a familiar feel to it in that we see characters trying to get out from under their parents' shadows and discover their own identities. I think the story and show capture this portion really well. Brandon and Chloe are interesting, but can also be sometimes one-dimensional. There are complexities to that dimension, but they're still kind of flat in one sense. I'm curious about some of the motives, though, of many of the characters. Not all that we see is explained well, or even sometimes at all. There are 8 episodes in this first season, with the times varying from 35 to 56 minutes, and the bulk of the time is spent building out our heroes, and really showing us their journey to become those heroes. In fact, the journey that the characters are on to become heroes spans the entire first season. And when we see villains, I don't think they're very well defined when it comes to motivations. And this is probably one of the weaker portions of the season. But we need to take into account that this is less about the bad guys than it is about the formation of the Union and the Code and where it fits within modern society. Now, I was sucked into the story and was really intrigued by the journey of our characters to become superheroes. Yeah, it is drawn out and maybe a little repetitive in parts, but it was compelling and it kept pushing the narrative forward. Now, if you go into this expecting Marvel or DC, I do think you're going to be disappointed. This has some of the feels of The Boys, with complex heroes who aren't always totally pure of heart. They're flawed people trying to do their best and maintain a set of values in an evolving world. Now, episode 8 was crazy. We see the culmination of a journey and some good reveals that I just wasn't expecting. Now, on a technical side, I can't criticize too hard on the special effects because the screeners that Netflix sent me didn't have all of the final color corrections and mixes that were totally complete. But from what I saw, some of the effects were really good. There were some scenes that left a little to be desired in terms of the special effects, but those also could have been just not fully complete yet. Something small that I enjoyed was the aspect ratios. When we saw flashback scenes, they would be full screen. And then when it would fade or jump to the present day, the aspect ratio changed to widescreen so that you had the black bars at the top and the bottom. It's a subtle difference, but something that I like to differentiate the timelines. I do think the show has more work to do, especially when it comes to explaining about the younger generation of heroes and giving more information on the motivations of some of the villains. They've done a good job of setting the stage and built a story platform for some real depth and drama. And because Netflix bought the entire catalog of rights to Millar's work, I'd say there's a good chance that this show will have some legs and we'll get to see at least a second season, if not more. So if you're up for a good origin story that has mystery and complexities, and you're okay with less action than drama in a superhero genre, Jupiter's Legacy delivers unique and relatable characters in an enveloping narrative. Yes, there are areas of improvement when it comes to some character motivations and development, but the stage is set for some powerful tension and excitement. There's sex, maybe some brief nudity, a lot of profanity, and some very brutal violence. I give Season 1 of Jupiter's Legacy 4 out of 5 couches. Have you been looking forward to this series? Do you have a favorite superhero? Maybe one that's not from Marvel or DC? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.